Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Reverend Tammy Patzer, and this is another exciting episode of Expert Profiles, Conversations with Influencers and Innovators. And I have someone that I've talked to before, but so much has happened, and I'm really excited that we have Sherman Ragland with us today, and he is a member of the Forbes Real Estate Council and the prestigious Forbes Business Council. So all I know, what I can tell you about Sherman is Sherman, number one, is the real deal when it comes to real estate investing. So you definitely want to lean in and listen to him. And he has been described by Inc. magazine as America's real estate mentor. And in 2020, Think Realty magazine actually did a cover story on Sherman Ragland, and they named him America's wealth creator. So real estate and wealth. And today we're actually going to be talking about the three big mistakes that real estate investors make. So I could go on and on about Sherman's background, but I really think I want him to really tell us more about, before we get into the three big mistakes, tell me a little bit more about who your clients are and how you help them.
Oh, absolutely. So thank you, first of all, Tammy, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No
Our clients fundamentally break down into three groups. People who really want to do real estate to create a passive income or what they call it, a side hustle. And they've heard these stories about how people are making 6-7-figure incomes working from home. People who know people in real estate who are successful at it go, hey, they don't work really hard. They take a lot of vacations. I want that to be my lifestyle. And truth of the matter is I was in that category. I first came across a very successful real estate investor when I was in my teens in college. And this guy was very, very chill. And I'm like, excuse me, sir, but we had a tennis class. I went to one of these liberal arts colleges. And so you had to take phys ed back then, et cetera, et cetera. And I saw this guy who would always be hanging out at the tennis courts during the middle of the day. And I walked over from one time, I said, excuse me, but do you mind if I ask, what do you do? Because every time I see you, you're at the courts. And he, of course, drove a convertible Jag. It was green. You know, he was punching all the buttons. And he says, well, I'm in the real estate business. And that's all I needed to know. So there's the first category are people who really just want to pursue real estate and either replace the current income or have a side hustle. The next group are what I would call entrepreneurs. And real estate is not really a part of their core strategy, but they know somewhere in the recesses of their mind that real estate is a part of a wealth building kit, and it is. If you look at the Forbes, and thank you for mentioning the Forbes Real Estate Council and the Forbes Business Council, but if you look at the Forbes 400, which is the annual edition that Forbes magazine publishes with the 400 wealthiest people in America, real estate is always a piece of it. Whether you're talking about Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, real estate is a key component of any wealth building strategy. If you stop and think about it for a second, if you're an entrepreneur, as you are and as I am, most entrepreneurs start, either at the kitchen table or in the garage. You grow to a certain point that if you're so fortunate, you pick up a couple of part-time employees, 1099s or W-2s, and then you need to have your first expansion. And so what's the first place you go? You go after you've exhausted friends and family, mom, dad, et cetera, you go to the bank. And what is the first thing the bank always wants to see, even if they like your business plan, even if they like you, even if you're banking there and they understand that your business has been growing, what's the first thing of substance that they want to see before they guarantee or agree to make a loan? They want to see collateral, right? And so what do most entrepreneurs, what's the dilemma that most entrepreneurs face? Do I put up my house to fund my fledgling business, or do I go without the loan? And the answer is you don't put up your house and you don't go without the loan. You have a couple of pieces of investment real estate, because for the most part, the bank doesn't care what real estate you put up as collateral. They just want to see some collateral backing the loan. And in fact, both I and my wife both have been doing entrepreneurial endeavors for years. My wife has a company that has nothing to do with real estate. And as she grew and as her company began to pick up more and more employees, going from 3 to 12 to 65, her lender always wanted to see some collateral. Well, she never put our house on the line to grow her company to 65 employees. She used the real estate that we owned as a part of our passive real estate investing, or her passive real estate investing strategy. So second category is really entrepreneurs who understand the power of real estate, especially as a key wealth building tool, especially as a key component as having collateral to be able to get the capital that you need to grow the business. And then the third group is real estate agents. Most real estate agents do not really know anything about investing, but they want to. And surprisingly, there was a poll done many years ago, and approximately one third, 33% of all real estate agents said they got their license because they thought that was the path to becoming an investor. And shortly after they've been in the business for a year or two, they realized that it's not a path to investing at all. Thinking that you're going to be successful as a real estate investor because you are a real estate agent with a license is similar to thinking you're going to win the Indy 500 because you have a driver's license. A driver's license just allows you to get into the car. It doesn't say anything about the skills, and say anything about the depth of knowledge, and say anything about any of that stuff. And so about 10 years ago, we founded the Real Investors Academy just outside Washington, D.C. We are certified by the state of Maryland, the Maryland Higher Education Commission, as a trade school. We are Better Business Bureau A+ rated. So speaking to what you're talking about, there's a lot of folks out there who profess to know about real estate, who call themselves academy, whatever. We are a legitimate academy. We are a trade school in the eyes of the Maryland Higher Education Commission. I think we're the only real estate school in the country that has oversight by a state regulatory body. And so those are the kind of the key constituents that we serve. And we have classes developed to help folks in those three categories: people who want to get into real estate and have some aspirational goal of doing it part-time, full-time; those who are entrepreneurs who understand the power of real estate and want to get some real estate in their portfolio to help grow their core business; and real estate agents who want to work with investors and they understand the need for specialized knowledge and certification and credentials to work with investors. So that's our three groups of people that we work with.
So when you work with these people, can they be anywhere in the United States, or do they need to be in your area?
So great question. Up until 2020, we were probably the best kept secret in America. I founded the Real Investors Academy because I saw so many people hungry for the knowledge, but getting it from all the wrong places back in 2003. We bought our first building, a 5,000 square foot building, in 2005, and then we expanded in 2008. We had a 10,000 square foot campus, and we were predominantly a local to the Washington, D.C. metro market, but developed our curriculum, our skills, our success stories, and our ways of teaching over roughly a 20-year period of time. Then, of course, COVID hit. And again, because we are regulated by a state higher board of education, they told us that on March 16th of 2020, we had to close our doors to the general public. They told us flat out, you will not. That was, of course, the early days of COVID. Nobody understood anything. There were no vaccines. Everybody was running scared. So we had to very quickly shift from 100% brick and mortar establishment serving roughly a 90-mile radius, call it, around the Washington, D.C. market. So Northern Virginia, Central Maryland, Washington, D.C. proper. We had to quickly shift literally within 72 hours. March 16th, I think, was a Friday, and we had to reopen our doors on Monday. So we quickly shifted from a brick and mortar to an online. And over the past 18, 24 months, we have basically been taking all of our what were brick and mortar courses and brick and mortar curriculum and porting it over to an online platform. But we still provide the local expertise, the local knowledge. And now we're actually looking to expand through sort of franchise, quasi-franchise with other dedicated real estate professionals so that we can still offer that localized knowledge and that localized hands-on. So it's a nice kind of a hybrid model. All of the teaching, all the curriculum, all of the courses are available online. So if somebody wants to go through, let's say, a session on how to do negotiation at 2 o'clock in the morning, because maybe they got a meeting coming up at 10 o'clock, they can access that online through Real Investors U, which is our online portal. But then we also offer hands-on coaching, mentoring in the local markets where we operate.
Wow, I'm excited about that because I have watched you online through some of the Facebook, and I've seen some of the meetings where people are there asking questions and everything. So I think that's really good, because when obviously you have that local knowledge, which is great for that local market, but a lot of the skills you teach are, you can apply them anywhere where there's real estate. And it's funny because I was one of those people who got my real estate license thinking that was the path. And then as it turned out, I ended up actually buying houses. Like I bought my first little house I lived in, and then I moved and rented that out, bought another house, and I did that. And then of course I lost it all in the big 2008 fiasco, other than the house I live in. So I don't feel bad because I didn't lose the one that was important to me.
Well,
you know,
like you said, the truth of the matter is that at a minimum, that's the way it's supposed to work. And so many folks are out there teaching real estate and real estate investing strategies where people are placing their core residents at risk. And that, I mean, people teaching people to go get home equity lines of credit to go buy real estate, people telling people to use credit cards to buy real estate, people talking about it's okay to sign personally for loans. All of that stuff puts your personal residence at risk. And one of the fundamental things that we teach is you never lose, like two fundamental truths that we offer. Number one, if you don't own your own home, get your own home. In fact, I even wrote a book and went on a book tour, which I think is how we met, at a book called 7 Steps to Getting Your Own Home, because that's your first investment. That's where everybody should start. So that's number one. Number two, once you get your own home, you never, ever, ever, ever put that at risk to do your real estate investing, because you don't need to. And I'm sorry to hear that you lost some of your investments, but I'm glad to hear that you never placed the number one investment, your primary residence, at risk. That's absolutely the correct strategy, and that's foundational to also what we teach. And I will say one other thing. I'm glad you saw us on Zoom and on Facebook and Instagram now and YouTube now. We actually have what we call our flagship course, which is called the Partners Program, which allows people to learn the business by actually partnering with us. So we give them the curriculum that they need, and then we give them opportunities to either partner in deals by either being a co-investor or, in many cases, earn fees for bringing deals to the table. And we actually have people as far away as London and Sweden going through that program. So when you talk about people being able to reach us and us being able to reach others outside of the Washington market, absolutely. That is one of the silver linings, one of the blessings of converting to a 100% online platform for the core materials and the core teaching.
Well, that's interesting, because that is something that I always wonder about, because I've seen the ones where they go, oh, it's all about marketing, and put the signs out on the yards, I buy homes and all that. And I've always wondered, okay, well, how do these people buy these homes? And there must be some type of a partnership program somewhere. So what would you say are your clients' biggest problems? I want to know some of the problems they're facing before I get to the big mistakes. Okay. Because I know, for example, the biggest problem that I see is people want real estate, but like you said, they don't have any idea about how to get started. Right. Maybe they don't have money. Maybe they do have their home and they believe that, oh, I have to use my home to leverage. So what would you say are the biggest common problems that your clients have?
Well, I think the three biggest challenges, before we even, like you said, get into the mistakes. The first biggest challenge is just frustration. Social media is a two-edged sword, and we're seeing that each and every day, that it's not just, sometimes it's about, connecting with people that you've lost touch with. It's about, taking all those photos that you take that used to sit around in albums that nobody ever looked at, and now people can see photos and share memories. That's part of the good aspect, and connecting like-minded people. That's part of, but there's a negative aspect to it too. And I'm not going to go through the whole laundry list, but one of the negative aspects is every Tom, Dick, and Harriet is now an expert in a field because they did something one time, or worse, never did it, but they can rent a Ferrari for an hour, take a bunch of videos in and outside the Ferrari, and now they put themselves out as some kind of expert. So there's just been an absolute explosion of real estate gurus. people who profess to have knowledge that it's highly unlikely they actually have. And those who do have some limited knowledge probably have never been through a downturn in their life and don't understand what happens when real estate goes down. Because real estate, like any other investment, is cyclical. It goes up, it goes down. I remember way back when real estate agents would tell the big lie, oh, buy real estate never drops in value. Well, we saw what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010, right? Sometimes the value goes to close to zero when there's no financing available in the marketplace. And if you had bought in 2006, 2007 and didn't purchase correctly, chances are you, like a whole lot of Americans, would have lost property 2008, 2009 because it wasn't structured properly. And unfortunately, we just have each and every day, again, because of social media and the power of social media, people who can put out YouTube videos and Instagram photos, and people believe that folks have a certain amount of knowledge, but they don't know enough to know that the stuff that they're being fed is kind of a line of bull, just to be kind. And not only people who are sort of imposters, the guru set, but also just a proliferation of people who are saying my way or the highway. You have to do it this way or it won't work. And so many different concepts, so many different ideas that, quite frankly, really haven't been tested or proven over the test of time. And so I think there's a lot of frustration in the marketplace of people saying, well, what strategy should I trust? Who should I trust? What's really going to work? And people really sort of winding up going through dead end holes because they believe in some guru they met or saw on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, whatever. And then when they actually attempt to do that strategy in their own backyard, it doesn't work. And then they're upset and then they want to quit. So I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge is misinformation, bad information, and information that hasn't proven to withstand the test of time. And you can either sort of break them out into three separate frustrations or put them in a one big ball of yarn, so to say. But I think that's probably the number one thing that really is hindering people and hurting people, just massive confusion because they don't know who to trust and they don't know what strategy to trust.
You just said what I was thinking, was that because of social media, you really don't know who to trust. And just like you said, these people, I've seen some of these gurus they'll have piles of cash on tables and show the cash. They'll show themselves on yachts. They'll show themselves in multi-million-dollar mansions and in the fancy cars. And it's interesting because, I live in an area where I could drive up the road and go to, different dealerships, a Bentley dealership or something, or a Rolls-Royce dealership, and stand in front of a car and have somebody take my photograph. And whenever I see those, they're normally a lot of times younger people, or they're targeting younger millennials or males normally in with this advertising. I always just want to go slap them upside the head and say, stop, this isn't real. You really need to stop and look at people who are giving solid advice and giving you information that also that they understand it's called work, and that it isn't anything magical is going to happen where you're going to end up. I see these ads on my phone all the time, and it'll say, this couple bought 30 multifamily residences in 2 years. And I'm thinking to myself, that just seems like a lot of multifamily residents.
You gotta have sort of a guru BS indicator. And as my mama said, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And it's funny because I'm going to show my age a little bit. Back when I was coming up, we didn't have the equivalent of cable TV on your mobile device. And there's probably people young, like my son's age, my youngest son's age, 20, going, what's cable TV, right? Because he started watching television or whatever, or videos, whatever you want to call it, on his iPhone. And he got his first iPhone, he was 8. And that was probably one of the biggest arguments my wife and I had is, do we give our son, who's 8 years old, his own phone? And ultimately decided yes, because the benefits outweigh like knowing where he is and making sure we can communicate in this ever increasing crazy world where you have to be sort of in constant communication with your children. But long story short, when I was coming up, there was a whole bunch of gurus who later on, many of whom went to jail, including the first course that I ever bought. He actually won, a guy named McCorkle actually wound up in jail. But there was a guy named Tom Vu. And of course, back then, you had to hire a production company, you had to pay to get it on cable TV or broadcast TV. So just getting your message out was very, very expensive. And that, to some degree, limited the number of gurus and so-called experts. But there was this guy named Tom Vu who was Vietnamese, and he was very proud of the fact that he spoke very broken English in his infomercials. Of course, he spoke very fluent English when he wasn't on camera. And all of his infomercials were about getting rich in real estate. And he was always in the back of the yacht with like 8 or 10 women in bikinis. And so that was his whole shtick, with money flying everywhere. And when I see people sort of reproducing that sort of Tom Vu-esque way of advertising and marketing, my BS guru meter just goes off the charts going, okay, somebody's about to get taken for a ride. And the sad part is that most of these folks who are doing this, they're offering $1,400, $3,000, $10,000 coaching programs. And it's only after people have spent thousands of dollars that they realize, oh, wait a minute, this guy really doesn't know what the heck, or this gal doesn't know, or this couple. So yeah, anytime anybody does a commercial or advertises in front of anything other than a property that they own or one of their students own, I would say highly suspicious. So yachts, money flying everywhere, Lamborghinis. For some reason, the Audi, I think it's the A4, A5. My son.
Airplanes.
Yes, airplanes, private jets. Anytime. By the way, I'm in the private jet business. We are the.
Yes, I remember that.
we're the local partner for Signature, and unless you have a humongous ego or a very, very, very profitable company, flying private is not something that the average multimillionaire or even billionaire does, because it is, well, maybe billionaire. I mean, Oprah flies private for privacy reasons, because if Oprah sat in the first class section of United Airlines, nobody would ever move past the first class section. They want to get her autograph. So there are some legitimate privacy reasons why some people in the public sphere, but for the most part, most multimillionaires are not flying private jets because they're just horribly expensive. What the cost to go from here to Chicago on a Southwest, so to speak, is, a couple $100 to go United first class, maybe $400 or $500 to fly private jet, $20,000. I mean, it's just astronomical. So private jets tend to be the purview of people who really want their privacy, in which case they're not doing YouTube videos, right. or somebody who has a publicly traded company and they're basically having the shareholders pay for that sort of indulgence. But anyway, I digress. Sorry about that. But yeah, I would say anytime you see private jets, lots of cash, yachts, big houses that are not actually the subject of, hey, in other words, if there was somebody out there who said, let me show you how to buy, fix, and flip $1 million houses. And oh, by the way, here's 2 of the houses that we flipped last week, and here's 2 of the houses that my students have flipped, then I'd say, okay, that's great. I've only known in the history that I've been teaching, I've been a professional real estate investor student since I was in high school. And I've been teaching real estate really since after I graduated, got my MBA from the Wharton School of Business in real estate finance and worked in real estate finance. And people started coming to me at a very young age talking about how do you get jobs in the industry, and African-American, both men and women would come to me and say, hey, this is sort of an old boys club. How did you crack the code? How did you get in? And I kind of made a habit. I actually founded an association that was helping people to sort of become insiders and get inside the industry. So I've been in some form or fashion teaching since I was in my 20s, and I'm well past my 20s now, as you can probably see. So long story short, I've only met one guy in 30 years who ever attempted to teach people how to flip $1 million mansions. And he stopped doing that after a year or 2 because he couldn't replicate his own success. So I would say anybody who's advertising that they're going to get you in the real estate business, that's not at a minimum either sharing with you specific content, specific strategies, and most importantly, success stories of their students, because anybody can sort of do what I call a one-off transaction. They can get lucky. But can somebody show a history over a 2, 3, 5, 10, 20-year period? of teaching students how to successfully get into the business, those are the people that I want to talk to. And again, it doesn't have to be real estate. If I'm going to make an investment, if I'm going to be listening, and I'm not necessarily talking about money, if I'm going to make an investment of my time, I want to be associated with people who've got a history, people like you, people like my friend Ryan Dice, who has a company called Digital Marketer, people who have a 5, 10, 15, almost 20-year history. Dan Kennedy, right? Clint Arthur, somebody who we both mutually know. People who've got a history of teaching people, and they're not so much showcasing their own successes as they're showcasing the successes of their students. That's who I want to be listening to. And all of this flying money and money guns and yachts and bikini clad women on yacht, all that stuff is just noise if in fact the thing that they're teaching or the thing they're advocating actually works. Because if it actually works, show me the houses, show me the checks, right? Show me the lifestyle of your students. Don't show me all of this sort of theatrics that has nothing to do with learning the subject matter. So anyway,
yeah. That all makes a lot of sense, and that is actually a good lesson, not only for real estate training, but like you said, any type of education or training, because you said it has to be something that can be replicated. And that, like you said, anyone could do it. It can't be just like, 1 out of 100 people can do this. It should be a replicatable strategy that if you do what I teach you to do, you should have success, because, we've proven it time and time again. So
it's kind of funny, just real quick, Tammy. I understand how important it is that people see success stories and social proof. And earlier this year, I instructed our video crew just to gather together. Every time somebody is successful in getting a deal done, we document it. We document it for 2 reasons. One, we want to be able to demonstrate, again, because we're a trade school, we're an institute of higher learning. We have to demonstrate our successes back to the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So part of it is we have to validate our existence as an institution. But then we also want to capture the moment, capture when these things happen, so that other people who are going through our curriculum, going through our program, can see, hey, here's people just like you who've also been successful. So we'll normally go meet with somebody on a property and have them talk about what, real quick, what did they do? How were they successful? What part of the curriculum, which particular class that they were taking that we offer helped them the most to get that deal done? And these little snippets are probably maybe 2 to 5 minutes. And so I had my video crew just sort of take sort of the best of and compile. And I was expecting them to give me like an 18-minute or 20-minute sort of reel. And the guy gave me the video. It was 2.5 hours long, composed of just 2 to 3. And I'm like, wow. I mean, we've, over the past few years, we've helped a lot of people. Again, all of them were only like 2 to 5 minutes, but we got 2.5 hours worth of people talking about how they were able to put deals together using and leveraging our training. And so I'm not saying that anybody you're listening to should have a 2.5 hour, sort of validation reel, but they ought to be able to demonstrate, 10, 15, 20, depending upon what the topic is. And if they can't demonstrate real life people who've had real life successes, then it's probably time to just sort of like move on to the next person and find somebody who can demonstrate that they have that track record. So anyway.
Wow, that is pretty phenomenal when you think about it, because 2.5 hours of people saying, well, I use this strategy or this strategy, but that could be really effective. So everybody's been waiting to hear what are these 3 big mistakes.
Yes.
And obviously, if you were making a mistake, we want to know how not to make the mistake.
There you go. So again, it doesn't really matter whether you're brand new to the game, you've been at it for a while, or you consider yourself to be an expert. These are the 3 most common mistakes that we see investors make. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're sort of looking for a side hustle, you're an entrepreneur just looking to get a couple pieces of real estate so you have some more collateral and some more diversification of your wealth building, or you are a real estate agent looking to work with investors. Big mistake number 1, by far, most important mistake, not having a system for generating quick cash. And a lot of people look at real estate as long-term hold, long-term wealth creation, and that's absolutely correct. That is the number one way to use real estate as a tool. However, real estate can be used to generate quick cash. It's kind of like if you ever, wanted to paint a house, right, or paint a room in a house, right? Technically, that flathead screwdriver that you're using to pry open the lid of the paint can was not designed to pry open the lid of the paint can. It was designed to put a screw into a hole, right? But there's nothing wrong with actually using that. The paint company, Sherwin-Williams, actually have a little device you're supposed to use to open up a paint can. But you can use the flathead screwdriver as a tool in a quick instance. And so in a similar way, understanding how to use real estate as a tool to generate quick cash. Now, I'm not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, but $1,000 here, $5,000 there. I don't know of anybody who doesn't from time to time need an extra couple of $1,000s. And there are strategies that you can use. And one strategy in particular that we teach that will allow you to get control of a piece of property and turn around and sell your rights in that piece of property in as little as like 21 days. We can teach people how to do this and come up with, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7,000 every time that you do it. I think anybody who's serious about real estate, that's one of the strategies and probably the first strategy that you should learn. I've been at the real estate game for, well over 20 some, 30 some years now. And when I was working for somebody else, making them wealthy, I was doing $50 million, $100 million deals back in the 80s. Today, most of the deals that I'm doing with myself and my family, friends and family money, they're roughly between 5 million and 10 million. And they tend to take a couple years to put together because oftentimes they're either development or repositioning. And it's not uncommon that I needed like an extra 5,000 or 10,000 to hire another consultant or pay another bill. Or my wife and I want to go down to I like to tell the story. We went down to St. Thomas, which is one of our favorite places, and hopped over to the island of St. John. And I'm very, very blessed. My wife reminds me all the time, I'm very, very blessed because my wife's not really into jewelry or fancy things. But one day we were in this jewelry shop, the highest end jewelry shop in the island of St. John, and she saw a watch that she really liked. Well, that watch was $5,000. And I bought it for her. And I bought it for her knowing full well when I came back home, I was going to quick cash or quick flip a deal. And before the credit card statement even arrived, I was going to use that money to pay off that bill. And I did. And so understanding how to generate quick cash from just, everyday single family house transactions and having a system to do that, it is so empowering if you know that, hey, on any given day, even in the worst possible market, 2008, 2009, 2010 were some of the worst years in real estate. But despite that, deals were still taking place. And having a system to tap into where those deals are taking place and be able to generate $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, on average about $5,000, almost on demand, that's got to be, in my opinion, one of the first things that people learn how to do if they're serious about being in the real estate game. So forsaking, and guys are really guilty of this, way more so than women. You talk to 5 women and say, well, what do you want to do in real estate? And they'll say things like, pay for my kids' college education, make a couple extra bucks so I can come home. Not to be sexist because guys want to come home too, right? Or just have some extra pocket money. You talk to most guys and say, well, what do you want to do in real estate? Oh, I want to do enough deals to go get a Lamborghini. Oh, I want to do an apartment house. Oh, I got to do a downtown skyscraper. Like guys always want to do like these big impossible things that almost never happen, whereas women tend to be a little more pragmatic about their investing. And so it doesn't matter whether your goal is to be a full-time investor or just have some pocket money. Understanding that real estate can be used as a tool for generating quick cash and focusing on that. And I oftentimes say to my guy friends, guys, stop thinking about the 100-unit apartment building. Stop thinking about the downtown skyscraper. Forget about the neighborhood shopping center. Let's just focus on quick cash. In other words, let's just focus on some strategies that put money in your pocket in the next 21 days, 30 days, 45 days, and get good at that. And then we can pivot to go do some of these bigger deals. But let's focus on the quick cash stuff first.
Okay, I like that. That sounds like something that you can do. So that was the first one. What's the second one?
So the second one is in our world, the way we teach it, And we actually have a strategy that I've been teaching now for almost 20 years that, to the best of my knowledge, nobody else teaches. Not that they can't teach it, but nobody else does. It's called hacking the MLS, right? And so the foundational core to our quick cash strategy is actually understanding how, well, first of all, understanding that 80% of all single family houses go through what's called the multiple listing service, or MLS. And as I think it was Jesse James who gets credit for saying, well, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, that's where the money is. Well, we teach people how to hack the MLS because that's where the deals are. In any given city, any given county, any given jurisdiction, anywhere, township, whatever, in the United States of America and US territories, 80% of all residential deal flow is going to happen through the MLS. So understanding how to hack the MLS to get deals and walk away with deals and generate quick cash is one of the first things that we teach. Once we've had people master that, and it doesn't take long, we're talking about maybe 30, 40, maybe 60 days. Once you've mastered that, then we pivot to go after what we call off-market deals. Now, here's kind of an insider secret most people do not know. When you're talking about single family houses, residential deals, and I'm a firm believer that if you're going to play the real estate game at any level, you play it like the game of Monopoly. And if you've ever played Monopoly, before you can go get that red hotel, you got to first do what? Four greenhouses, right? Four greenhouses. Four greenhouses, then they let you go do the red hotel. Again, and guys tend to be over the top guilty of this. Folks want to start doing apartments. Folks want to start with commercial properties. That's not where you start. To sort of borrow, again, to show my age, to sort of borrow a phrase from Rocky 2. And there was a scene in Rocky 2 where Rocky says to Mickey, you don't want me to get back in the ring because you think I'm going to get hurt. Bad. And Mickey says to Rocky, no, I don't want you to get back in the ring because I think you're going to get hurt permanent. You're going to get hurt permanent. People who want to start their real estate careers by doing commercial deals, multifamily deals, apartment deals, office buildings, if you make a mistake on that first deal, you are probably going to get hurt permanent. It's going to put you out of the game. It's going to put you so far behind financially. Why? Because there are protections in the world of residential real estate that do not exist in the world of commercial real estate. If you make a bad deal or somebody takes advantage of you on a house, either a house to live in or a house as an investment, there's lots of different places you can go, including the state's attorney general office, to have recourse. You could actually have a judge undo a deal and order the person who took advantage of you to give you your money back in the world of residential real estate. If you make a similar mistake on your first deal as a commercial deal, there's no judge in the world who's going to undo that deal. Their whole attitude is, if you're big enough to do commercial real estate, you're big enough to suffer the consequences if you screw up. So the kinds of protections that we see, just sort of consumer protection law and general consumer protection, those don't exist in the world of commercial real estate. On top of which, just the price of the ticket to get into the game for commercial is substantially higher. Now, I'm not saying that no one should ever start off in commercial, but there's only a handful of people who should. People who were given $1 million trust funds at 21, yeah, maybe maybe you're okay, because you were given $1 million, and if you lose the $1 million, it's just sort of a lesson learned. People who grow up in real estate families, so like my 20-year-old son, he heard real estate from the day he was born, and so he's smart enough not to start with commercial. He's actually flipped about 5 houses, and he's not even 20 yet. Actually, he's not even 21 yet. He's 20. He'll be 21 in about 5 months. But he cut his teeth on single family houses, but he could have potentially started off in commercial. And people who own their own businesses and they've been renting property for a while, and they're like, you know what, a smart move might be to go buy a commercial townhouse or a commercial condo. If you're not in that sort of those 3 categories, trust fund baby, grew up in a real estate family, you're second, third generation, or you have a solid operating business and it makes sense, as Robert Kiyosaki says in Rich Dad Poor Dad, use your business as a tool to go buy real estate. If you're not in those 3 categories, then you should probably stay away from commercial for your first few deals. And again, like the game of Monopoly, go do 4 greenhouses and then pivot into or graduate into commercial. So if you're going to do residential, and here's the insider secret I was about to share with you. There's only 2 places to find residential deals, and most people don't understand this, right? So let's just go ahead and share this secret with them. 2 places to find residential deals. They're either in the MLS, and those are what are known as in-market or on-market deals, or they're outside of the MLS, outside of the multiple listing service, and they are generally referred to as FSBO. And that's an acronym, for sale by owner, also known as off-market deals. So that's it. And so any given city in America, approximately 70 to 80% are MLS and approximately 20 to 30% are FSBO. There's nothing in between. There's nothing in between. So we recommend that people get started with the MLS, hacking the MLS, and then after they got that quick cash system down, pivot, and I literally mean pivot, into going after these off-market deals. Why do we think it's better to start with the MLS and then pivot? Well, when you're dealing with off-market deals, that seller is not represented by a real estate agent. That means one of two things. Either they don't know what they're doing, and if they don't know what they're doing and you don't know what you're doing, how do you think that's going to come out, right? I think there's a scripture that says something about blind leading the blind, right? It generally doesn't go well because nobody really knows what to do. Well, if you start off by hacking the MLS and understanding contracts and the process and the lingo, just getting the language down, then it's very easy to pivot into these off-market deals. So if the person you're talking to doesn't know what they're doing and they're not represented by a professional, then one of two things is going to happen. Either they don't know what they're doing or they do know what they're doing. In which case you are literally the fly that has now flown into the spider's web. And they're gonna run you 9 ways to Sunday. So starting off MLS, hacking the MLS, doing quick cash deals, and then pivot into the FSBOs where you've built a team, you understand the lingo, you understand how the whole process works. You have, at a minimum, you have a title company at your disposal, you have a contractor so somebody can go and do a cost estimate for you. And so we call that strategy getting bigger checks, because generally speaking, those FSBO deals, those off-market deals, do have significantly higher profits built in, even if you're doing quick cash. I mean, I've seen people get 80,000, 100,000. We got one guy in our group named Howard who first came on the scene about 10 years ago. He was one of our students. He's now also one of our teachers. He consistently gets six-figure paydays, $100,000 paydays from one deal. And it's always, 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 when he calls me up and says, Sherman, I closed another one, 110,000 this time, it's always from an off-market deal. So the enticement is that you're going to get bigger checks, but it's not the place to start because you have to have a little more skill. You have to have a more robust team to help you pull those kind of deals off. But it does make sense, as I said, to pivot into those off-market deals. And if you stop and think about it, if you have a strategy for the MLS and you have a strategy and you have another strategy for off-market, you literally have tools to cover 100% of the market. You are an absolute versatile basketball player. You have that sort of athletic posture that you could go either way, whichever way that the market is going. If the market's going up, great, use your on-market strategies, on-market techniques. If the market's going down, like it was doing in 2008, 2009, then use your off-market, things like pre-foreclosures, foreclosures, short sales, that kind of stuff. So having that versatility, again, think of it like being an athlete. You're in that athletic posture. You could go either way, no matter which way the market's going. So I would say big mistake number 2 is not understanding the importance of starting with the MLS and then pivoting. You don't want to stay on one side or the other because you need different techniques, different strategies for when the market's doing different things. When it's going up, you're sort of strongly leaning in. And so the MLS sort of posture, when the market is cresting or going down, you definitely want to be using some of these off-market techniques, or what we call get bigger checks techniques and strategies. So those are sort of the two out of the 3 big mistakes I see a lot of people making. And getting that order right, starting in the MLS right, and pivoting.
That makes a lot of sense. And what you're saying, a lot of so-called gurus will tell you, oh, don't ever try to buy anything that's in the MLS because, and I think the reason is they're always talking because of the real estate commissions, because that seems to be why.
Here's the reason why. They never learned how to hack the MLS. And it's a great point you bring up. The reason why they tell their students to stay away from real estate agents, the MLS, is because they never learned how to do it themselves. As I said at the outset, I don't know why more people aren't teaching how to hack the MLS. Now, truth of the matter is I do know a little bit why, and here's why. When you work with real estate agents, they're not going to let you use some contract you downloaded off the internet. They're going to laugh at you if you try to use some, and I don't care if it's even a legal Zoom, right? When you're working with agents, you have to use a board of realtor contract. Well, right. A lot of gurus don't like the board of realtor contract because there's certain language in there that they don't want to use. They want to be a little more crafty. They want to be have some weasel clauses and stuff. And what they don't understand, because they either never got their own license or never studied the market, is you can use something called an addenda. That's what we teach, an addenda, to put additional language into the contract that will allow you to do the kinds of things that you want to do. And you don't want to be slick. You don't want to be sleazy. Yes, you do want to have some kind of an escape hatch if you make a mistake, but you don't need 1,001 weasel clauses. You just need one particular clause written one particular way. And that's what we teach, to allow you to escape. Even if you're at the settlement table and everything's falling apart, you can still exercise this one clause you put in the addenda that allows you to walk away clean and not lose a nickel. A lot of the gurus don't want to bother trying to teach that, or for that matter, understand it. Now, here's the thing about the hacking to MLS strategy that those guys don't seem to understand. In the world of real estate, when you're talking about real estate agents and you're talking about MLS, there's one law that, as far as I can tell, and I have not been to every single state, so I don't want to say this is the gospel, but every state I have been to, there is one law that's on the books everywhere that I've been. And that one law is all written contracts must be presented to the seller.
Yes.
So in other words, even if the real estate agent doesn't particularly like what's in the agreement, they cannot, by law, refuse to present it. So I hear all these real estate agents all the time huffing and puffing. There's no way I'm going to present my client with a low ball offer, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, excuse me. In Maryland, doesn't the law say? In Virginia, doesn't the law say? In DC, Delaware, Georgia, and they all say,
Florida.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So therefore, as much as you may not like my contract, you have to present it. This is fundamental to our MLS hacking strategy. Why is that? Because I teach folks to use the existing Board of Realtor contract, and through the use of an addenda, put in 3 specific sentences. So it's one page, it's just one page, but the entire document must be presented to the seller. And I cannot tell you how many times, now it's not 100%, and you don't need to worry about 100%, but it's probably about 2 to 3% of the time, the contract will be presented. And the way we teach people to write it, it's presented in such a way that the only thing the other side could possibly object to is your price. And it's really important that it be presented, written a certain way, because you can't be in the room when it's presented. But because the law says it has to be presented, I cannot tell you the number of times, it's in the hundreds now, of me hearing back from our students where they're being told, the real estate agent said, how in the world did we know that the seller would accept that offer? Because they said they wouldn't accept anything less than X, and our offer was 10% below X, but they still took it anyway. I said, because you never know what's in the mind of a seller. And the big problem we have in this industry is real estate agents act like they're the seller. They're not the seller. They're an agent. That's what agent means. And so because the law says the contract must be presented, if you write it in such a way, that seller's going to look at your contract and you're instantly going to be their newest best friend, because you're not asking for any of the things that other people are asking for. You're not asking for a study period. You're not asking for an inspection. You're not asking for this to be fixed and that to be fixed. You're not saying, okay, I can't buy your house until I sell my house. None of that stuff that's typically in a residential contract. We don't put that in there. And in many cases, we strike stuff out. But the one thing that they are going to object to is your price. Well, Tammy, have you ever sold anything, or have you sold anything in the last 5, 6, 7 years where you had to sort of negotiate the price? Car, home? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So if I give you an offer,
I offered less and they took it.
it's like, if you present an offer that everything about your offer is just fabulous except price, then where does the conversation go? Price. That's where the conversation goes straight to price. It's not about when do you want to move and this inspection and these repairs. Like, most people, they don't understand, and certainly most gurus don't understand. There's a whole lot more that goes into the negotiation of the sale of a home besides just the price, right? If you sold a home, if you bought a home, there's the when do we move, when do we get the keys, how many repairs you're going to make, are we going to get that oven, you're going to give us a different oven, or does a washer and dryer stay, what about what's going on? Like, All of that stuff, quite frankly, becomes noise. And when we teach the hacking the MLS strategy, we teach how to write the border realtor contract, the one that the real estate agent is used to using, in such a way, using things like addendum and scratching out certain clauses, so that when it's presented, the only thing the seller can say is, I love your offer and give me a higher price, or I don't like your price, go away. And I cannot tell you how many times agents have said to me and have said to our students, I had no idea my seller would go that low. Of course you didn't know, because they're sitting there pounding the shoe on the table going, I'm not going to take less than 200,000. I'm not going to take less than 200. Well, all of a sudden somebody presents an offer for 175, but it's presented the right way. They're like, you know what? I don't want to do 175. Can you go to 178? And you get under contract for 178, and then you assign the contract for 180, 182, 183. So your buyer gets a fantastic deal. The seller gets the number that they absolutely wanted, and the real estate agent at the end of the day gets their commission. And since most of them are commission-based salespeople, they're still getting paid. Everybody winds up happy. But the problem is most of these gurus are telling people, stay away from the real estate agents, as opposed to dealing with the real issue, which is how do you write an offer in such a way using the border realtor contract that it's going to be presented, but presented so that it winds up being the best offer, not the worst offer. Again, it doesn't work in every situation. And somebody who's really hung up on that 200,000, they don't care about anything else. But guess what? If you present the offer in such a way that it very quickly gets to, hey, I don't like your number, next, they did you a favor. Because we're teaching people how to find these deals without actually going to visit these deals and write these offers without actually having to go visit them. So when do you actually visit it? When they come back and say, can you give me a higher price? Well, I can give you a higher price if you let me go take another look at the property. That's when you go out and you meet with your contractor and then go, okay, go through, okay, how low can we go using the formulas that we give you so that you probably come up a little bit, but they're going to come down a lot. And that's how this hacking the MLS strategy basically works. Understanding what needs to go in the contract and what doesn't need to go in the contract. That's how you're able to do these deals so quickly, 21 days for the most part.
Wow, 21 days hacking the MLS. So, wow, I'm excited. What's number 3? What's the number?
Oh, okay. So once you generate quick cash and then you pivot into what we call get the bigger checks and go after the off-market deals and having some basic fundamental marketing funnels. And for a lot of people, it's like, what's a marketing funnel? So we teach people how to create marketing funnels. We even design and give them funnels that we've created in something called ClickFunnels. I don't know if you and your clients or you and the people that you talk to use ClickFunnels a lot.
Did you say ClickFunnels?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's ClickFunnels, Lead Pages. Yeah, there's a lot, but ClickFunnels is one of the major ones, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about ClickFunnels is I can build a funnel in ClickFunnels and just give it to you. And all you got to do is swap out your name, your phone number, your URL. I mean, Lead Pages, I think you can do the same thing. I'm not sure, but the big thing about ClickFunnels and what Russell Brunson created is that whole ecosystem called funnel hacking, where basically everybody's sharing each other's funnels, and therefore there's a lot of the speed to implementation is greatly reduced, right? As well as the learning curve is greatly reduced. But we teach people the fundamentals of marketing, no matter which tool you use. So I use ClickFunnels, I use Infusionsoft/Keep, I use WordPress with Thrive themes. So it doesn't really Kajabi. It doesn't matter. We don't want people to get hung up on the technology. That's where a lot of people, quite frankly, go off.
Get hung up.
Get hung up. Exactly. Exactly. So we're like, no. Marketing is marketing is marketing. Don't let the tool. Your marketing plan drives the tools. The tools don't drive your marketing, because if you're not careful, you'll be off on the side of the road because you don't understand the tool or what the tools should be doing. So, but we teach people how to go get these off-market deals, and the core concept that we teach is how to bring motivated sellers to you using some of these basic tools like Lead Pages, ClickFunnels, Keep, et cetera, and we actually show people how to create good marketing campaigns, even if you never use Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. So we teach you how to do what's called offline marketing. And then we also teach you how to do online marketing to, in fact, get these bigger checks, to get these deals that are not in the MLS. But again, we teach that as what we call sort of a phase 2 strategy after you've mastered the hacking the MLS and made some money and you're building up your team and have a good understanding of how the business works from these $5,000, $10,000 checks that you've made. And then the third thing that I see as a huge mistake is after you've been at this sort of in the beginning stages, hacking the MLS, getting bigger checks, you're ready to graduate to the bigger deals. You're ready to graduate to buying, fixing, and flipping. You're ready to graduate to buy, fix, hold. You're ready to graduate to commercial. And most people get stuck permanent because they don't know how to raise money. And we teach people during your first 3 months with us how to do the hacking the MLS, how to get bigger checks, and most importantly, how to start the process of raising private investor money. As I say to my folks, all the time, you're never going to have enough money to do deals looking in your own bank account. Nobody has enough money to do deals in their own bank account. So understanding the correct way to go about establishing relationships, cultivating relationships with family, friends, co-workers, your spheres of influence. I mean, I sort of go through in the first day of the money raising class. It's called Where to Get the Money. Interesting enough, wheretogетthemoney.com, right? It's real simple. Right?
Everybody wants to know where to get the money. That's like you said, unless you're Amazon, Bezos, you aren't somebody that can just go, oh yeah, I have magic money to go buy these houses.
Exactly. And interesting enough, Bezos had to raise money. I mean, I remember in the early days of Amazon, the big story was, would Amazon survive, or would his shareholders fire him? Because in the early days, Amazon wasn't making any money. It was losing hundreds of millions of dollars. Anybody who was old enough, again, I'm showing my age, to remember when Jeff Bezos was on the cover of Forbes and his vision for putting bookstores out of business.
I think he had hair.
Not much. What's funny is he was definitely not buff like he is now. I mean, being rich actually apparently has a wonderful effect on your ability to go work out at the gym all day long. But I digress. But the long story short is, nobody has enough money to be able to do the kinds of deals that most people envision without understanding how to raise private investor money. So again, and I'm repeating myself in that I talk about a system for hacking the MLS, a system for getting bigger checks, and a system for raising private investor capital. And it's a lot easier than most people think. If it tends to be a little harder for the 20-somethings, but if you're 30, 40 years old, you probably know enough people to raise $500,000 in 6 months or less. And $500,000 in private capital matched up with either bank loans or small, and the right kind of bank loans, like small community banks that really love real estate investors, or specific kind of lender called a hard money lender, oftentimes abbreviated as HML. $500,000 in private investor capital probably is enough money to do somewhere between $1.5 million and $2 million worth of deals in almost any market. I'm just outside Washington, D.C. That's one of the most expensive real estate markets in the world. I'm in the process of buying a neighborhood shopping center, like the one thing that Amazon can't put out of business. You know, Amazon's not going to cut your hair. Amazon's not going to deliver your pizza. They tried that and decided that wasn't for them. Amazon is not going to give you Chinese takeout or dry clean your clothes. And so I have an opportunity to buy a neighborhood shopping center, the one that I actually frequent when I do actually have, you know, I used to take clothes to the dry cleaners every week. Now it's only like once a month. She's like, hey, how you doing, Mr. Sherman? I'm like, good to see you again. Right? It's because so much time goes by of not wearing suits and stuff. But long story short, I got a neighborhood shopping center I'm buying right now for $2 million. $500,000 is more than enough private investor capital to make that deal work. And so teaching people the process, the system for raising private investor money allows them to grow as an investor and do things like buy, fix, and flip. You know, you don't need $500,000 to buy, fix, and flip. In most marketplaces around the country, you can still find single family houses for $150,000 to $200,000. In some markets, that sounds way expensive, right? Wow, a house that's $150,000, right? DC market, where the average price of a house is $700,000, you can still find houses for $200,000. But to buy, fix, and flip a house like that, you probably would need $20,000, $30,000. Again, most people don't have that laying around in their bank account, either savings or checking. But through the use of private investors and using the techniques that we teach and the systems that we teach, you probably know 2 or 3 people who could easily write you a check for $20,000 if you approach them the right way and you help them understand how to use money that's just sitting there earning barely anything right now and put it into your deal for 3 to 6 months and then you're returning to them somewhere between 10-15%. They're going to love you. They're going to love you all along because A, it's secured by real estate. B, it's 5 times, 10 times more than what they're making in a CD or some other low interest bearing account. And C, finally, you're in and out in less than a year, right? So you're not tying people's money up for multiple years at very low interest rates. You're turning their money at 10. In fact, the number one thing that people say when we teach people these techniques is they have people saying to them, hey, I was only in the deal for 6 months. How soon can we do it again? I got a couple of investors right now that I've done, $30,000 of private investor money to buy, fix, and flip a house, giving them their money back in like 3-4 months with 10% rate of return. And like, hey, when are you gonna do the next one? So
actually, I've participated in something similar to that where I made 10% on my money in 3 months. And I thought that was a great deal, and it was secured by real estate, and I could have let it roll, but I opted giving back my money because I was just experimenting to make sure that it was a real thing. And so I got my money back, but it was like no issues. I mean, it was the easiest thing I ever did. And I did make 10% in 3 months. And so I imagine the annual percentage rate on that is actually more than 10% if it would have went, rolled on. So, I understand that. That is a very reasonable expectation if people understand the concept of, hey, anything secured by real estate, to me that really made it more secure in my mind. And I also trusted the person that I was working with. So I had those two factors.
One of the things that I teach in the class to our students is why real estate is the ideal, IDEAL, why it's the ideal investment versus the stock market, versus CDs, versus Bitcoin. And it really is the ideal investment. It gives you current income. It gives you something called depreciation, otherwise known as tax shelter. It gives you appreciation. In other words, the tax man lets you say your building is worth less, but in reality, in most cases, most markets, the building is actually worth more. So you get depreciation and appreciation, and you get what I call equity buildup. If you own a piece of property, most people own properties using what's called 30-year amortizing mortgages. And if you stop and think about what that means for a second, that means if you bought a house today, got a loan for close to 100%, which again, typically can't do as an investor, but you probably can do for your single family, your own home purchase. 30 years from now, if you make all those payments on time, 30 years from now, you will not owe another payment at the end of 30 years, which means on the first day of the 31st year, you owe nothing for that house. It's like a forced savings. It's like, that's what I call the equity buildup. It's like forced savings. Like if you have trouble saving like I do, you want to be all over real estate, because when you make your mortgage payment, or even better, you put a tenant in the property and they make your mortgage payment for you, every year, the amount of money that you owe the bank is going down, 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 down. And if you hold it for 15 years, 20 years, or ultimately 30 years, you will owe nothing on that property. How long does it take you to save $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000? If you bought a property for $300,000 today and paid the mortgage for 30 years, and I oftentimes ask this question, anybody here in the room want to plan on being alive 30 years from now? I've got people 80 years old going, yeah, me. So if you just pay that mortgage, did nothing else but pay the mortgage, that means you're going to own that property free and clear in 30 years. That's what I mean by the equity buildup. Well, what's the chance that the house is only going to be worth the same that you paid for it in 30 years? In most marketplaces, that's a very slim, like in the DC area, we actually have studies done. DC area houses, not just Washington, DC, but in the close-in suburbs, double in value every 14.9 years. So essentially rounded off to 15 years. If you own a $300,000 house in a marketplace that is similar to the DC market, including the DC suburbs, that $300,000 house is going to be worth $600,000 in 15 years. And that $600,000 house is going to be worth $1.2 million in 30 years. And a lot of people hear that and they go, you got to be kidding me. But then I look at some of the deals I did 20 years ago, I look at my parents' house and what my parents paid for that house versus what it's worth today. Yeah, a house doubling in value every 15 years in our market is not unreasonable. Now, maybe you don't get a doubling every 15, but I'm sure you're going to get close to a doubling in 30. Even in a place like Waco, Texas, it's probably going to be, and I hope I'm not offending anybody from Waco, but sort of way out, what I think is way out in the hinterland is probably going to double in value in 30 years. So now you have a property you bought and all you did was pay the mortgage. In 30 years, you own it free and clear, and there's probably a high probability it's going to be worth twice as much. So again, I say to people, how long would it take you to save 300,000? How long would it take you to save 600,000? How long would it take you to save 1.6 million? And if that sounds like an impossible task, saving just go buy a house that's worth 300,000 and live in it for 30 years. Or you don't even have to live in it, just own it for 30 years. If you move out, don't make the mistake I made on my house. I had a house that I bought in Old Town Alexandria, very desirable marketplace. I bought that house for 147,000 in 1987. I sold it when I got married 20 years ago for 200 and some thousand. That house is worth $780,000 today. Oh, I kick myself every time when I think about it.
Yeah, we that hindsight is always like they say, is always 2020. And yep. and like I said, I had property that I just wasn't savvy enough. I didn't know, I didn't know.
You were savvy enough because you were savvy enough. You were savvy enough to make sure that you didn't lose your primary residence.
Yeah, well, that part I knew, and I fought really hard. I mean, I could tell you the stories about how I fought Bank of America because I just kept showing up in court and telling the judge, I said, I think I have a fraudulent loan, which I did. After I looked at it and I went back to what they did, like they literally changed the interest rate at the closing table.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, it was like, I didn't want to not get this house because it was my dream house, 7 acres, a big house and a guest house and a 5-car garage. It was in a horse barn. I mean, it was like, I couldn't let it go. But then later I realized, I said, they shouldn't have changed my interest rate at the closing table, but I was able to save it. And the other ones, I sold them. I mean, I didn't lose anything. Right. I just sold them and got out of them because I couldn't keep up on everything because, even though I had a renter, she was one of those deadbeat renters.
Right. Well, I love to tell 2 stories. One of them is the one I just told, which is how I foolishly sold my house when my wife and I got married. Getting married to my wife was the best thing I ever did. Selling my house in the process is probably the worst thing I ever did. So that bittersweet, because again, that house would be easily worth $780,000. Even if I didn't rent it on a month-to-month basis, it's in such a hot neighborhood. I could have Airbnb'd it and probably made somewhere close to $5,000 a month easily as an Airbnb. But I wasn't thinking. What my head was not in the game. And the funny thing, and this is the second story I love to tell. When my wife and I got married, second marriages for both of us, I decided to come across the river and come on the Maryland side. And right as we were doing that, I was doing a startup business. This was sort of the implosion of the .com era, right? And so I had 2 business partners with me in this high-tech startup, one of whom could never get off work, and the other guy always had plenty of time. And I remember saying to Bill, why is it that you always, anytime we have a meeting, you're always there, you always have this flexibility. What is it that you do? He says, well, I'm a tech guy. That was what he brought to the table. He was our chief technology officer, but he said, I own real estate. Now I got these visions swirling in my head of, maybe he owns some apartment buildings, So I said, well, Bill, if you don't mind me asking, and we're literally cleaning out the office because our venture has failed and we got to get the stuff out of the office or the landlord's going to take our furniture and stuff. And there's some stuff we wanted to keep and some equipment we want to keep. And I said, well, Bill, why is it, what kind of real estate do you own? He said, and again, I'm thinking apartment houses, hotels, all this fantasy stuff. He says, well, my wife and I both married late in life. We married when we were in our 30s, and she kept her house as a rental, and I kept my house as a rental. And we make so much money off of renting these 2 houses, 2 houses, Tammy, that we have enough money to buy a house in a part of town called McLean, Virginia. And I don't know how much you know about Northern Virginia or the DC, but McLean, Virginia is the high rent district. And so Bill and Lynn were able to buy a house in McLean, Virginia. Now, it wasn't the biggest house in McLean. It needed some TLC, but they were making enough money off of their rentals in North Arlington and South Arlington that they could pay their mortgage and still generate an extra $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And they were very frugal in how they lived their life. Bill was, again, an IT guy, but as an IT guy, you sort of have these ups and downs of, picking up task-based or contract-based income. But he was never, ever worried because every single month there was an extra $2,000 to $3,000 coming in because of their two rental properties. And I just said to myself, Sherman, what is wrong with you? And that became, quite frankly, the motivation for why I do what I do and why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I see so many people. That's probably the fourth mistake, is not doing real estate at all, right? Or thinking that I have to go get an apartment house, or I have to go do an office building or a hotel. No, just simply having 1 or 2 townhouses, rental properties in desirable areas. I mean, think about it right now. Your listeners, think about it right now. How could your life be different if every single month $3,000 showed up that you didn't have to get out of bed for? Just every month, there's three G's. Would that change your life at all? Whether you're an entrepreneur, or you have a job, or you're close to retirement, or you're 20 years old just getting started, just having 1 or 2 rental properties is the difference between every month struggling or every month, first of the month, hey, look, there's an extra 3 G's sitting in the account. Before we've gone to work, before we sold anything online, before we've opened up our YouTube store or Amazon, there's 3 G's that comes in every month without fail. And that's my ministry. That's my message. Yeah, maybe some folks want to go on and become full-time investors and have 7-figure paydays and 30, 40, 50 employees. But for most of us, oh my gosh, how much more wealth we can create and how much better our lifestyle can be if we just had an extra couple $1,000 just show up every month. Where we didn't have to get out of bed at dark 30 to make that happen. It just shows up. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, dark 30. You're absolutely right. And I think that number 4 is not to do anything at all, and not to understand that real estate can be an answer. And like you said, you gave so many good examples, like the quick flip type of making the money, doing something not necessarily long term, but doing it so that you have that cash flow coming in. And then the long-term look at savings. I love the way you called it forced savings, because I don't think a lot of people look at it quite like that. So Sherman, before I let you go, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, I am active on social media when social media doesn't go down. So you'll find me on Instagram at Sherman Ragland. You'll find me on Facebook at Sherman Ragland. You'll find me on YouTube at Real Investor or Real Investor TV. And obviously you can go to our website, realinvestors.com. And those are probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me. Is just go directly to me through the social media channels.
Okay, great. So thank you so much. I'm like, it's like, I mean, it makes me get really excited about real estate. I've always had a passion for property, and I've tried it a little bit, but you just have to go with the flow sometimes.
Right.
But I really like that concept of getting started, and not to always think that it has to be the biggest thing. That maybe, if you had a rental or 2, as well as that primary home, but first thing, start with your primary home and go from there. I think that was a important thing, an aha moment that people need to go, oh, get my own primary home first.
Yes.
And then grow from there. Because like you said, your own primary home is going to give you that asset that for savings. So right there, you're ahead of the game. Well, I thank you so much. And
I have a free gift.
Oh, good.
Viewers, sort of a real estate quick start kit. And the first component is I want to give everybody a free copy of my book. It's a Kindle called 7 Steps to Getting Your First Home, or Getting Your Own Home, excuse me. And it's a book that I wrote and dedicated to my daughter. It came about as a series of conversations. All 3 of my kids are involved in real estate. And the first one was my oldest, my daughter, who got her home about 5-6 years ago now. And as a result of some conversations that she and I had back and forth, I actually wound up writing a book because she asked if she could share some of the emails I had sent her with her friends who were also at that point in time, in their early 20s, looking to get their first home. So I put a book together. It's called 7 Simple Steps Getting Your Own Home. I actually wound up doing a book tour, and I would love to give that as part of the kit. Second thing I want to give in the kit is something called the Quick Cash Generator, which sort of reinforces some of the things that we talked about for that first big mistake. In other words, how do you hack the MLS? And there's actually a code you can use to actually get access to the MLS in your market for free. That's a part of the Quick Cash Generator. That's also part of the kit. And then the third thing is, have you ever heard of the message, The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale? The original movie called The Secret was sort of a loose kind of a borrowing, I'll use that term, of this message. Earl Nightingale in 1956 wrote a message called The Strangest Secret. And many entrepreneurs, many very wealthy people have said, this underlying message is something that really helped me get clarity and focus in building my business. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's a real estate business or any other kind of business. Well, Earl's widow, Diana Nightingale, and I became really good friends. And about 15 years ago, we put together a message just real estate investors. But again, you don't have to be a real estate investor. And it's called The Strangest Secret for Real Estate Investors. In the original message called The Strangest Secret, Earl talked about a quote unquote 30-day test. And many people heard his message, but never did the test. The test is really, really simple. Every single day, if you use this program, choose to use the program, you will get access to a message from Earl Nightingale that causes you to sort of sit and think as you start your day, and think about the one thing you want to achieve that day based on what he says. And so you do this over a series of 30 days, and it is amazing how just incrementally focusing on one thing every day for 30 days not only helps you really grow and expand as a person, and that's kind of the key to growing and expanding as a leader, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, but it also helps to establish that habit of every day, kind of like Michael Gerber said, thinking about things around your business and outside your business versus getting so caught in the minutia of the day-to-day of your business. So those are the 3 gifts I would love to give folks. And they can simply go to realinvestorsfreegift.com and go ahead and sign up, and it's all digital. So we'll get you started right away. You can get instant access and get started on it.
Wow. Repeat the URL on that again, please.
Real Investors Free Gift, or go to realinvestors.com/free gift. Either way will get you there. So realinvestorsfreegift.com or realinvestors.com/free gift.
Okay, great. I will definitely put that into the show notes too. And again, thank you so much, Sherman. I really appreciate, talk about jam-packed, a wealth. What was that? They called you the America's Wealth Creator. And now I know why.
It's really funny. I have had a passion for real estate for years. Mainly, as I said before, I wanted people to avoid the big mistake I made. I really felt like getting married was a blessing, but I was so fixated on everything other than real estate that I sold a property I didn't need to sell. And quite frankly, it would have been an even bigger blessing if I'd kept that property and kept the monthly cash flow, which would have been about 5 G's. And not to mention a property I would today own free and clear worth $780,000 to begin with. So I don't want people to make that same mistake. And that was really sort of the passion that fueled me for the early days. But seeing people seeing their eyes light up when they hear things they haven't heard before, seeing their eyes light up when I get them thinking about real estate in a different sort of way. And most importantly, seeing people be successful in their own backyard with their own real estate ventures is what really drives me today and really drives the whole team here at Real Investors. And we just want to see more people be successful using real estate the way it's designed to be used, as a tool to help build wealth and generate passive income and generate quick cash. And we're just passionate about it. We love to see people become successful at it.
Well, thank you so much. Everyone definitely take Sherman Ragland up on his free offer. And again, thank you. This has been Tammy Patzer with Sherman Ragland on Expert Profiles, Conversations with Influencers and Innovators. Talk to you next time.
Thanks, Tammy.